Hello e-boys and e-girls, this video is going to be a guide for Ororon. I'm going to be helping you guys build your Ororons as mainly a sub DPS slash support. We're going to go through over his gear, how he works, how should he be used, and what teams and stuff like that. Before we continue that though, if you're trying to get Ororon and his Constellations maybe up to C6, the best way to get Primo Gems and Genesis Crystals is going to be throughout Lootbar GG. Lootbar is a game top-up website where you can buy different games currencies including Genshin Impact. It's very safe and secure, and it's also cheaper than the official game stores. For example, if you click the link in the description, you go to Genshin Impact, you can pick an offer. I'm going to pick this offer right here. In the official game store, it's going to cost me around $50. On Lootbar, it's around $40.50. And it can be even less with other coupons and stuff like that. Like the 8% discount coupon for new customers. That means I saved almost $10, which is super good. Lootbar, you can always save up to 20% in a lot of good deals. But yeah, you just pick the offer, put your user ID and your region, click on top up now, and then you just pay. And then you just wait a couple of minutes and the Genesis Crystals are going to be in your game. Those are some of the latest reviews you have from Lootbar. Click the link in the description and top up now. Alright, so first of all, let me explain his kit very quick. It's going to be pretty simple. It's not complicated at all. So that's going to be very quick. But mainly what Ororon gives is going to be just an Electro bow user. His normal attacks are just going to be normal, so there's nothing special about them. His elemental skill is just that little bubble thing. You hit opponents with it and it can travel up to 3 times and deals damage. That's it. It can hit one opponent only 1 time. So if there's only 1 opponent, it's just going to deal 1 hit. If there are 3 or more, it's going to deal 3 hits. It's going to just travel between them. That's pretty much it. His elemental burst is just going to put a taunt on the field that's going to attract enemies and they're going to be hitting it, and then also it's going to be dealing electro damage while it moves. Pretty simple stuff. It's mainly just damage. For his passives, they're also very important. The first one is that when you use your elemental skill, when a nearby party member hits an opponent with their normal attack, charge attacks, or plunging attacks, that character is going to restore 3 energy, and Ororon off field is going to also restore 3 energy up to a maximum of 3 times, so it can give up to 9 energy for the character on field and 9 energy for Ororon himself, which is a pretty good supportive energy passive. The second passive is that he pretty much just gains Night Soul points when another character on your team uses their Night Soul bursts, or after he uses elemental skill, a character deals hydro or electro damage, and then when electro charged reactions are triggered, he's going to be dealing extra damage, consuming his Night Soul points. So it's just damage for electro charged teams. That's pretty much all of his second passive. So yeah, that's pretty much all of his kit. It's actually a very simple character, probably the simplest we've seen in a while, especially for new characters. It's not complicated at all. From that, we can see his role is obviously just going to be a sub DPS slash support. He's going to be dealing damage from his passive, his elemental skill and bursts. Man, he's going to be scaling normally with attack and stuff like that as a normal sub DPS. And he's going to be supporting your team with like the energy from his passive, and also his from Natlin, so you can use the supportive Natlin set, which automatically is going to make him a good support. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Ororon, a pretty simple character. Now let's see how he's going to be built. So moving on to his talent priorities. For his talents, for his supportive capabilities, you don't really need to upgrade any talents. But if you're trying to just up his damage, you can upgrade his elemental burst first and then his elemental skill. It's just going to up the multipliers and you're going to be able to deal more damage, which is pretty good. Now moving on to his constellations, we're going to go through them very quick and see which of them are going to be pretty good. So first of all, his C1 is just going to add 2 extra bounces to your elemental skill. It can be good when there are a lot of enemies, but if there are less than 3 enemies, it's going to be kind of useless. And that's going to make opponents take 50% increased damage from the damage from your passive. So it's just going to increase your passive's damage. And that's going to be pretty good in electro charged teams. Pretty decent, especially for C1. In electro charged teams, it's going to be a super good constellation. So yeah. Or when you're playing them with a Night Soul character. His C2 is pretty much that it's just going to be giving you electro damage bonus the more opponents you hit with his elemental burst. It can give you up to 32% electro damage bonus for 9 seconds. So it's just more damage. If you care about his sub DPS potential, it's going to be pretty good. Otherwise, it's really not necessary. C3 is just level of his elemental burst, also just more damage. C4 is that your elemental burst is going to rotate faster, which means it's going to hit more enemies. And then also when you do your elemental burst, you're going to restore 8 energy for Ororon. So it's just less energy requirements, but they weren't really crazy in the first place, so it's pretty much just like some energy, maybe better uptime on your elemental burst, and maybe some extra damage. That's pretty much it. C5 is just level of your elemental skill, extra damage too. And then finally C6, it's more support, so when the character is on field and you trigger the passive, it can give them up to 30% extra attack, which is pretty good. And then there's just more damage from your passive, which is also pretty good. So for his constellations, definitely none of them are necessary. He does his job, which is just the energy support and the Natlin set. With C0, every constellation is just going to increase his damage by a little bit, except C6 that can give him more supportive capabilities. Just 30% extra attack for your active character, which is pretty good. So yeah, I wouldn't really recommend going for any of his constellations. If you get them, then good. If not, then they're just not necessary at all. Alright, so now moving on to his weapons. As I said before, I see Ororon as mostly a supportive character and he deals some decent sub DPS damage, but he's mainly a support. So obviously you want to go for support weapons first. The best support bow we have is going to be the LG for the end. It's just going to be helping out your team with attack and elemental mastery, and Ororon can trigger all the passive. So it's going to be a very good supportive weapon. If you have it, then definitely you probably should use it on Ororon. It also has a high base attack, which is pretty good on him, and energy recharge, he can like that. But it's mainly a supportive weapon. His damage is not going to be the best with it, but it's going to support your team pretty well. So yeah, I'd say if you have the LG for the end, then you should probably use it with Ororon. Probably the only other supportive bow we have is going to be the Favonius. Now, on Ororon himself is definitely going to be bad because he just doesn't need that much energy in the first place, and also his damage is going to be lacking. But as a support weapon, the Favonius is always going to be pretty good on any support character. So it depends on the team. If you're playing him like an energy hungry team or something like that, then the Favonius can be good. I would say it's rare though. You probably shouldn't use it unless your team really needs energy. The rest of the options are mainly just going to be damage options. So probably the best damage option is just going to be like the Amos, and the rest of all of like the crit 5-star weapons are probably going to be good stat sticks in general. They could just give you the high base stack and crit, so they're all going to be pretty good. If you have any of them, you can equip it if you just want to use them for damage. And for 4-star options, you can use like the Alley Hunter. It's just going to give you damage bonus, which is going to be pretty good. You can use the Stringless for the elemental mastery. It's going to be pretty good in Electro Charge team. It's also going to increase your skill and burst damage, which is super good. Chain Breaker is also going to be pretty good. Basically, any just weapon that can increase your damage is going to be pretty decent and usable. The only really good weapon is going to be the LG for the end, as I said before, is like a support weapon. Other than that, just use any damage weapons and they're going to work on them pretty fine. Alright, so now moving on to his artifact sets. The only real necessary set you'd want to use on him, which even makes him viable in my opinion, is going to be the Natlan set. First of all, which is just going to give you energy, which is pretty good. And then it's going to give 40% damage bonus to all of your party members, including Ororon himself. So it's just a huge amount of damage bonus, a huge support set. Any main DPS is going to appreciate that by a lot. So yeah, it's definitely very necessary. Just use the 4-piece even if you don't have good stats on it. I would almost say that's the only viable set just because of how good it is. If you really don't want to use it though, I mean, you can go for any like damage sets like 2-piece Electro, for example, and 2-piece attack, or you can go for like the 4-piece Thunder and Fury to increase your Electro Charge damage. I mean, there's just a lot of damage sets, but just really use the Natlan set. Even if you don't have good substats, just farm any 4-piece and use it. It's gonna be so worth it for the support. Now moving on to your artifact stats, it's pretty simple. You're just gonna build him as a normal sub DPS. He just scales with attack and crit, and that's it. So you just want attack on your Sands, Electro damage bonus on your Goblet, and then crit on your Circlet. Just pretty much a normal build. All of our supportive capabilities are not going to scale with any stats or anything like that. It's just this passive and then the Natlan set. So yeah. And for the substats, you just want to get some energy recharge and then also just get attack, crit, elemental mastery, and that's pretty much it. For his final stats, you just want to have the normal crit values. So at least like 50-70% crit rate and then as much crit damage as you can. For the energy recharge, he doesn't really need a lot of energy recharge. His burst only costs 60 energy and he can regenerate energy by a lot of like means. The Natlan set is passive. Also, probably you have the Electro Resonance, something like that. So you really don't need a lot of energy recharge. Just get some substats, probably max out at around like 130 or something around that. And that's going to be very enough. Even if you have less, you probably can manage without it. And now finally moving on to his teams. As I explained before, he's just going to be an Electro sub DPS. That can also be a decent support. He can give you energy and use the Natlan set for damage bonus. So I'll feel Electro damage and application, damage bonus from the Natlan set, and then energy from his passive. That's all what he can give you. For the teams that need that, there really are a lot of teams. Obviously the first option is going to be the character with him in the banner right now, which is Chaska. You can just use Chaska and then Ororon as a sub DPS. And then probably you just need a Hydra with her. The best option is probably going to be Fiorina because she can buff for 2. And then you can use any other character, probably like a healer with Fiorina, like Charla or even Bennett or something like that. All of these are going to work pretty fine. But yeah, as I said before, it can work pretty well, mainly in like Hydro mixed teams. That's probably going to be the best. You can work with Nuviet, for example, as a like a sub DPS. They can also apply Electro. So you can have a team with like Nuviet, then let's say Fiorina, then let's say Ororon, and like Kazuha, for example, or whatever. But yeah, really, he could just be a good filler for any teams who needs a sub DPS and doesn't mind Electro. It's just going to be giving you that sub DPS damage and also the damage bonus from the set and energy. No team is going to say no to that. So yeah, it's going to be a very flexible character. But yeah, that was the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.